الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. All praise and thanks belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May the peace and blessing of Allah be upon His servant and final messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. As to our followers, my dear respected brothers in Islam, inshallah ta'ala, I just wanted to share with you something very short, inshallah. It's just to sort of fix the idea or know about the idea of how to go on about in thinking about in terms of our situation with what happens outside. Now I know this is something that is relevant for us to speak about. We always need to speak about our brothers and sisters overseas and what happens to them from Syria to any other country, and the destruction that they go through and the oppression that they fall. What is our stance towards this? Not only that, how do we see ourselves as well in comparison or in terms to what they suffer as well? So this is something that actually is mentioned in the Quran, and this topic and this idea isn't something new. Allah Azza wa Jal had already introduced in the Quran long before. And so at the first point I make is that you look at the situation of our brothers and sisters. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to give them aid and to help them through basically the situation they're in. And you understand, the first point you need to understand is that they are being tested by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that does not mean that you aren't being tested by Allah Azza wa Jal in whichever situation you're in. And there are people that do go against this point, that's saying, stop speaking about the idea that overseas are tested and you're tested over here and this. And I wanted to clarify this. So Allah Azza wa Jal, He says in Surah Al-Anbiya, He says, وَنَبْلُوكُمْ بِالشَّرِّ وَالْخَيْرِ فِتْنَةً وَإِلَيْنَا تُرْجَعُونَ. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, nablukum. Nablukum simply means we're going to test you. And nablukum means we're going to rigorously test you. So this is not like a kind of an easy test. An easy test that's alluded in the Quran would be the word imtihan. أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ امْتَحَنَ اللَّهُ قُلُوبَهُم. But when Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, وَنَبْلُوكُم, this word nablu, ibtila, it means a rigorous test, a rough test. Now, how is this test going to come? He says, بِالْخَيْرِ وَالشَّرِّ فِتْنَةً. We're going to test you in the good and we're going to test you in the evil, and both of it is going to be a fitna. Both of it is going to be a fitna for that person. A fitna, in other words, it's a trial. It's not going to be easy. The word fitna gives the understanding of something that is not going to be easy. The word fitna comes from the word fatana, and this also, it derives from the Dawah, which is known as a Fitan. And basically a Fitan is the one who smolders basically gold. So the fitna is the process of purifying gold. It's put into the machine at a really high temperature, and then it comes out from the other end pure. That process is called fitna, purifying gold. So in other words, it gives the idea that a Muslim that is full of sins and a Muslim that is dirty, he's put inside a testing machine. And it becomes really hot from down the bottom. He's really tested, but only for the purpose of him coming pure at the end of it, so that he comes free of his sayyat. This is what the fitna is. So Allah Azza wa Jalla, He says, we test you in the good and in the bad. Now, the best story that ever mentions this and is given in the Quran is the story of Sulaiman alayhi salam and the story of Ayyub alayhi salam. And interestingly, they are both put right together, straight after each other in Surah Sad. And there is something to learn from the order. Now, it's not just the idea of, okay, there's the story of Sulaiman, then after him is the story of Ayyub, and then move on. That's not the thing. There is a comparison, there's a connection. Why was the story of Ayyub mentioned directly straight after the story of Sulaiman? And with this, you'll learn this idea of nablukum bisharri wal khayri fitna. And I'll tell you this, listen. The story of Sulaiman alayhi salam, you need to know some things about him. Sulaiman alayhi salam was a king. Actually, he was the son of a king and made him a king as well. He inherited that kingdom from his father Dawood alayhi salam. And Sulaiman alayhi salam was healthy in his being. Physically, he was healthy, had lots of money, he had armies. His armies weren't just made up of people, min al-jinn as well, from the shayateen. Not only that, he had the worst of shayateen underneath his control and underneath his rule. He had the birds as well, they were a part of his kingdom. He had so much that Allah Azza wa Jal had given him. He had the wind would basically move by his command. The wind would move by his command. He'd tell the wind, move us, south, and it just takes them south. Take us to the east, it'll take them to the east. That was all something Allah Azza wa Jal gave him. He had so much basically. He had more than you and I would ever make in our life. That's how much he had. And even with all that, Allah Azza wa Jal at the end of his story, he says, نِعْمَ الْعَبْدُ إِنَّهُ أَوَّابٌ. نِعْمَ الْعَبْدُ, what an excellent slave he was. And verily he was someone who continuously returns to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does it mean that he continuously returned to Allah? In other words, he continuously returned to Allah with shukr. Because Allah Azza wa Jal had made the life of Sulaiman alayhi salam much easier than the life of Ayyub, as I'll mention to you just in a short while. Sulaiman alayhi salam was someone who the ulama, they say, mu'afan sahihan fi badani. He was well, physically well, he was doing alright, there was absolutely nothing wrong with him. And on top of this, he had so much, and with this so much, it did never distract him from the remembrance of Allah Azza wa Jal. Actually, the more he had, the more he spent in Allah Azza wa Jal's cause. This is why Allah Azza wa Jal gave him so much. And so, from the life of Sulaiman alayhi salam, you learn that he never went through any pain, through any difficulty. And what was wanted from him is that he basically appreciates and becomes grateful to what Allah Azza wa Jal has given him of blessings. This is what was wanted of him. So in other words, when you look at the life of Sulaiman alayhi salam, that is a good example of nablukum bil khair. We're going to test you with what's good. Because on the apparent, his life seems to be good. And the idea is when you live good, when you live in a comfortable life, when you live with luxuries, when you live with comforts, and when you live with lots of money, and when you live in such a state where you don't have to worry about what you're going to eat tomorrow, what you're going to wear tomorrow, when you live in a situation where you don't worry waking up at 4 in the morning, jumping in the car and driving to the masjid, going home with full peace and with full safety and not worrying about something dropping on your head from above or someone coming to shoot you and kill you. When you don't worry about all this, then this is nablukum bil khair. That's also a test Allah Azza wa Jal recognizes in the Quran. It's not that you're not being tested. You're being tested much more than those overseas. I tell you how. Because when you're being tested in that which is good, then Allah Azza wa Jal wants from you shukr. But the thing is, how do you realize you're in a test? It is much more difficult to realize you're in a test of good than realize you're in a test of evil. It's much more difficult. So this becomes so difficult. Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, وَقَلِيلٌ مِّنْ عِبَادِيَ الشَّكُورِ. Only a few of my servants make shukr, and only a few servants know how to gratitude and how to show thanks to Allah Azza wa Jal for the blessings that He has bestowed upon them. So that was Sulaiman alayhi salam. Sulaiman alayhi salam, just to elaborate on the point of how much he had, he asks Allah Azza wa Jal for something, but something really odd. If you were to study it and you read this dua, and then you were to think carefully about it, you'd ask yourself, why is Sulaiman asking this dua for? He makes a dua, he says, رَبِّ هَبْ لِي مُلْكًا لَا يَنْبَغِي لِأَحَدٍ مِّن بَعْدِي. Allah Azza wa Jal, He teaches us that, as a believer, when you make dua, you know that, okay, you make dua for some of this dunya, and then you make lots of dua for your akhirah. That, Ya Allah, give us the paradise and give us this and so on in the akhirah. But the weird thing here, now you look at this and you need to understand why it's here. Sulaiman alayhi salam is asking Allah, not for akhirah. In this dua, he's asking Allah for more worldly possession. But only he's saying, Habli mulkan, grant me, gift me a kingdom. And then he goes on to say, La yanbaghi li ahadin min ba'di, that none after me befits to have the same kingdom as me. So in other words, give me so much that after me there is no one who befits what you give me, only exclusive for me. You know why? Because Sulaiman alayhi salam, he wasn't deceived by that which he had. And it did not distract him from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The more he had, the more he gave it fi sabilillah. The more he had, the more he put it in Allah Azza wa Jal's deen. And this is why he said, Inni ahbabtu hubb al-khayr. In other words, I loved the good to do good. An dhikri rabbi, it means I loved the good to do the good for Allah's sake. So the more Allah gave him, the more he used it for the good. And so he knew how to thank Allah Azza wa Jal. So Allah Azza wa Jal, at the end of his story, He says, Ni'mal abd, what an excellent slave, innahu awwab, verily he returns to us, always in appreciation and shukr. Nothing was basically used for himself, only a minimum, whereas most of it was used for Allah's cause. Now, this is straight after him, Allah Azza wa Jal says, وَاذْكُرْ عَبْدَنَا أَيُّوب. وَاذْكُرْ عَبْدَنَا أَيُّوب. What do you know about Ayyub alayhi salam? If you see Ayyub and you compare it to the lives of Sulaiman, he was exactly the total opposite. He didn't even have control of his body, Ayyub. Didn't even have control over his body. Sulaiman had so much, Ayyub alayhi salam had nothing. Or he began with something and then that was all gone. Even his family, his wife, his children are all gone. You know, like even worse than the situation of one who lives overseas in Syria and being bombed from above. 18 years on his deathbed, bedridden, he couldn't move. His wife, his children, bit by bit, later on they're gone. His wealth or whatever he had was gone. The ulama, they say 18 years. They say that was the minimum. Some even put some other numbers, you know. That was his situation. Totally opposite to Sulaiman alayhi salam. And Allah Azza wa Jal praised him for one unique quality he had. He said, "Inna wajadnahu sabiran." Verily we found him with patience. We found him with patience. He did not complain about his situation. What was his patience? How was it manifested? It was manifested in his dua. What was his dua? He said, رَبِّ مَسَّنِيَ الضُّرُّ وَأَنْتَ أَرْحَمُ الرَّاحِمِينَ. What an incredible dua. He said, "Oh Allah, pain has befallen me. مَسَّنِيَ الضُّرُّ. Pain has touched me, has befallen me. I'm sick. I can't even get up." But then he doesn't ask Allah to cure him. He doesn't say, "Allah ishfini," or, you know, remove the darr or the su' from away from me. No. He says, وَأَنْتَ أَرْحَمُ الرَّاحِمِينَ. He says, "Ya Allah, I'm sick and you're the most merciful." That's it. He doesn't make a dua for Allah to cure him. Why? Because he doesn't know if being cured is good for him or not. So he just says, "Ya Allah, this is my situation and you're the most merciful. And that means it's your mercy that has put me in the situation I'm in. And I'm not asking to be better because I don't know if that's good for me. You know what's good. So I'll just tell you what my situation is. I'm feeling the pain and you're Arhamur Rahimin." And this is the thing that you need to understand about our brothers and sisters overseas. It is actually a rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon them in the situation they're in. And it is also Allah Azza wa Jal's decree that you are in the situation that you are in. And for both, Allah Azza wa Jal is testing. For one tribe, for one group, that is those who are afflicted with agony and pain, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from them sabiran. He wants patience. And at the end of the story of Ayyub, Allah says the same words for Sulaiman. Ni'mal abdu innahu awwab. Same words. What an excellent slave he was. Innahu awwab. He would continuously return to us with sabr. He'd always show us sabr. Same story. And look at the case of Sulaiman alayhi salam. He had to do so much worship as well. It wasn't only his worship. Okay, Allah Azza wa Jal had given him a healthy body. What are you doing with this body to thank it? So he'd consistently be in worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, you read the life of Sulaiman alayhi salam, he was an incredible worshipper. And then with what Allah gave him, he would always think about, how am I going to use it for his sake? Because really that's how you thank Allah Azza wa Jal for what He's given you. Is in the how would you spend it for His cause. Ayyub alayhi salam, 18 years he couldn't do anything. You know, what kind of, the worship that he would do would be limited to the situation he's in. Nothing more. What money? He couldn't even give a sadaqah. He didn't have anything. Only except a few of what Allah Azza wa Jal gave him later on after his life. That he became better for a few years before he died. But then even then, look at the situation is that Allah praised from him the quality of sabr, and He said about him, Ni'mal abdu innahu awwab, the very, very same words of Sulaiman alayhi salam. At the end, the ulama, they say, لأن أكون صحيحا شاكرا خير لي من أن أكون مبتلا صابرا. The ulama, they say that I'd rather prefer being healthy in my body and having something to survive on and being grateful to Allah than being someone who is sick and in affliction and trial and having to bear with patience. They said that this is a situation that is better than that, but at the end of the day you need to understand that they are both tests. And I tell you this, that the test of one who is going under trial and tribulation, wallahi, the test from the outside is much easier than someone like you and I who are tested with comforts and luxuries. Because for them to identify the test is very easy. It doesn't need a genius to understand that we're in a test when you see a bomb coming on top from your head. It doesn't require intelligence. So the fact that they acknowledge that they're in a test, now very simple. What's required from is that they just pursue in this patience until they meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But for you and I, it's very easy to get lost. Very easy to get lost and to acknowledge that you and I are in a test. Very easy to get lost. And which one now becomes more difficult? The one that becomes more difficult is the life that you and I live. Because you get carried away during the day and you forget to remind yourself you're in a test. Whereas the brothers and sisters overseas, every second that goes by, it's very difficult to get out of your head that you're in a test. And so when you live like that, you're always patient. At the end of the day, there's huge reward for that. But on this side, that's where the sorrow is. And with saying this, your duty is not only to thank Allah Azza wa Jal for what He's given you. Your duty is also to keep those overseas in your dua, in your remembrance, in whatever help you can offer, in whatever you can do. You need to go out of your way during the night to get up and make some dua. This all becomes a responsibility on you as well. So this is something that I wanted to share just to clarify the idea, clarify the issue. Inshallah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help our brothers and sisters overseas. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to destroy their oppressors, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to alleviate them from their harm and from their trial and from their tribulation. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to give them much needed patience during this time. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to grant their reward and to make it great and to multiply it. And inshallah Azza wa Jal, they enter the highest ranks of the paradise bi-idhnillah Azza wa Jal. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to make us or allow us to follow them as well. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us this unique quality of shukr. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to not allow us to become deceived and distracted by what we have of good. And we ask Him subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us in consistent check and reminder of Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Him subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us people of the Quran, people who benefit from the reminders of the Quran. إنه ولي ذلك والقادر عليه وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.